So you can drag any of the windows to resize them and move them around. What these show you are different viewpoints. So if I create let me just make a sphere. You can see that this is the top view, the front view, and the left view of that sphere. Okay. To move any of these, it's the middle mouse button. So you need to have a mouse with a middle mouse, and middle mouse does that. If you hold Alt and middle mouse, it rotates around and stuff. Okay, dokes. And scroll wheel will scroll in and out. So for this, you need a laptop, you need 3ds Max, and you need the mouse. I don't like having these viewpoints. A lot of people do, especially when you're trying to do very precise work. I don't. So I like having only this viewpoint visible. And it's this button all the way down here. Maximize viewport. It will maximize whatever you're selecting. So you can select different viewports. So like if I wanted to go here, I could go here if I wanted to. But I'll select this one and I will maximize. So I personally prefer this, where I just have that one viewport and look at it. But it's up to you, any way you want to do it. So you can see I've created a sphere. Let me do that again. How you do that, there are these panels here. Panel number 1 is where you create stuff. It's called the create panel. You hover over it, it even says create. Okay, dokes. I am recording this, but if you want to take notes, feel free. Just let me know if I'm going too fast. This panel is the modify panel, where we modify whatever we've created. But first I need to create something. And by default, the first selection is geometry. And we're only just going to worry about geometry for now. And it starts off with standard primitives. So a lot of very complicated shapes can come from very basic shapes. Like it start off, I showed you that box that turned into a foot. So you can start off with very, very simple shapes and make them complicated. So I can do, for example, yeah, I'll do a box now. And for a box, you just click and drag, let go, and it'll do, I'm not touching anything. Okay. All right. And then I click again for where I want it to be height-wise. I can also, while it's in this state, I can still change. You see the parameters are here? So length, width, and height, I can still change them here. And it's kind of the same in Unity. So you can still edit them. It's fine. You can still mess around with these. So 40, 40, 40. Cool. So I've made a perfect cube, right? Because I've set it to exactly the same on all sides. Perfect cube. And I can tell because I can rotate around it. Oh, perfect cube. Cool. All good. So there's obviously loads of different types of shapes here. There is a sphere. There is a cylinder. There is a torus, which is like a donut thingy. And yeah. And you can create all this. There's a teapot. The teapot's for rendering tests. It's like a meme. Like it started off as their rendering test, and it's just always in there since. But there's a bunch of different shapes. You can also click on this to create extended primitives, some more complicated shapes, and different types of objects. But for now, we're just gonna only deal with standard primitives, okay? Because it's just enough for you to learn. Now you may notice something, that I can't see the polygons. The polygons on my objects. So these are all, each of these are a different object. You can see this called cylinder 001, sphere 001, blah, blah, blah. But I can't see how many polygons there are. So I need to hit F4, which is edged, and it shows me all the edges. You can see it there. The other way you can do that is up here. I don't know if you can see that changing when I hit F4 between default shading and edge faces. You can also just right click there and you can select what you want. So really most of the time we just mess with default shading and edge faces. We don't really mess with all the other stuff. So now you can kind of see, oh, these things actually have, like the sphere has loads of polygons. The torus has loads of polygons. The cylinder has loads of polygons, right? And you can see that now, whereas before, boop, you can't see it at all. So when you're modeling, you almost always want to see all the edges, especially to change shapes and stuff. At this stage, you can still modify. So if I go to modify, you can still modify this by doing like, by changing the parameters here. So like height segments, I'm adding more segments, so it gets more cuts and less cuts. And same with sides, so I can have a smoother side. So if I go like this, it's very low poly. All right, so if I drop down to this, that's very, very low poly. So I might use that for something that's very small, far away, or not really in the player's view. I want to save my poly budget. Or if it's something that's really complicated, I may add loads of polys and like make it really smooth because the player is going to be right in front of it and looking at it. That kind of makes sense? Okay, so the thing is, why would I add these extra segments here? Like, let me turn off F4 just so you can see. So right now it's 5 segments. If I add like 200, so it's full of segments, you can see it's loads of segments, but visually it still looks like the same cylinder. So is there a reason why I would add all those segments? Only if I wanted to have a change in angle. So if I wanted it, for example, let me put it down to 3. Just going to do this really quickly. Remember, that's an edge loop, remember? Like a loop of edges all the way around. And if I want to do something like that, for example, and I actually needed those, you make like a little this kind of thing. I actually needed those edges because you can see the edges always stay straight. So if I want to have like a kind of curve thing, it needs to be edge, 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 okay? So I need to have those segments there. If I'm making a straight cylinder, it's just a cylinder, how many height segments would I need? If it's just pure straight? None. I don't need them at all. So adding all those extra segments is wasteful. Like, it probably won't do that much. It's probably not that big a deal, but it is wasteful. So just FYI, when we're being assessed, and later on when you give me your assignments, that's one of the things I'll be assessing. If you give me a pillar that's just pure straight and has 200 segments, I'm going to be, well, that's a really bad waste of polys, okay? So this is an efficient use of polys because I need exactly that many segments to get away with it. So anytime you want to have a change in angle, if you want to have a change in direction of the edges, you must have another segment there. Okay, all good? All good so far? Cool. All right, so does anyone have 3ds Max installed yet? No? It's installing? That's okay. I'll just move along then, and you'll just have to watch. Unfortunately, you can't do it as I'm doing it, which I would have preferred, but sure, I forgot to tell you. So let me just go to, how did I do that? Let me just rewind all the way to start. Control Z undoes, by the way. So when I've created something, I finished creating stuff, right? So this is my create panel. Every time I want to create something, click on it, do the thing, and then it's created. When you want to stop creating, you see the way it's got that crosshair? That crosshair is the creation crosshair. So if I click again, it'll keep creating more. If I want to stop creating, just right click. So right click, and I've stopped creating, okay? The main tools that I want to use, and try to write this down and remember these shortcuts because you will be using these shortcuts all the time. W, E, and R. W for move, so I can move stuff. E for rotate. And R for scale. I do not know why R is scale and not rotate, don't ask me. But it's W-E-R, okay? Move, rotate, and scale. So I don't want to see people, there is a move here, and there is a rotate here, and a scale here, but I don't want to see people doing click, oh, I need to move this over here. Oh, now I need to rotate it. I'm going to go all the way out here, and I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to go and scale it. No, don't, please. Just use the shortcuts, because you will be moving all the time. You'll always be like moving stuff, rotating it, scaling it a little bit, and you'll be doing that constantly, so just get used to those shortcuts. Okay, for any of these, you can see for the move one, if I hover, yeah? No? If I hover over one of the arrows, you see the way it gets highlighted? And if it's highlighted, it means it is locked in that direction. So if I click, it will only move in the y-axis, okay? I'm trying to move up, it's not letting me. It's only letting me go sideways because I clicked on that highlighted icon. If I can also see the square between X and Y, if I hover over that square, now I can move in this axis, but I can't go up or down. Does that kind of make sense? All right. So for all of these, the same thing. For rotate, same kind of thing. If you hover over one of the axes, it only lets you rotate in that axis. You can also hover in the middle of it and just kind of go whatever you want. Coolio? Same with scale. If I hover over one of these, scales in that direction only. that direction only, these two directions only, and in the middle, all three. The same what, sorry? Like a shortcut? No, you just kind of just hover over that, and that will only go in X then. You can also set it here. You see down here the numbers are showing up, X, Y, Z. You can also just type in there as well and set it to a number. All good? Okay, so now that we know the controls, let's go back to this. So I created something, I created a cylinder. Let me just delete everything else. So to select stuff, click and just drag, you get a little selection box and just delete, we'll delete them all. And I've got this fella, so I'm just gonna put them here and zoom in. So this cylinder here, it's created. I can now go to modify because I want to modify the cylinder. Unfortunately, right now you can see I can only really modify a few basic parameters. So like the radius and the height and stuff. I can only really modify these. I can't do what I showed you where I pulled that stuff. That you can't do that here right now. But what I can do is add modifiers. And the way that 3ds Max works, it's a little bit different from some other 3D programs. Maya is the same, but it calls it history. 3ds Max calls it modifiers. And what modifiers are, you add stuff on top of each other, and whatever you add on top modifies whatever's below. So anyone use Photoshop a lot? So like if you add an adjustment layer above something, it affects everything below it. It's the same kind of concept. If you add a modifier, it affects everything below. So let me show you. I'm going to add a bend modifier, and if I say bend it in this direction, actually bend it in that direction. So you can do a bend, for example. All right, so that's just a bend modifier. All that modifier does is just bend. Okay, it just does that one thing, and there's a bunch of modifiers here. They're all arranged by alphabetical order. So if you want to look for bend, for example, B. And it just shows up there. Cool. Now that is great, and that allows me to do simple stuff like bend and spherify. Spherify allows me to spherify stuff, so it kind of gets more like a sphere. But I want to individually affect different parts of my model. So I can delete those modifiers, just boop, they're gone. There's a little trash can here. And I'm going to add something, and this is going to be the modifier we're going to use all the time. It's editable poly. Edit poly. Cool. And edit poly allows me to edit the polygons. And now you can see the selection panel that I have. I can pull this out here, and you'll be able to see more. This is vertex, so I can select the vertex and pull it out, and you can see that it affects the entire model. So wherever I pull out, because as I said, all the edges have to stay straight, the edges have to continue connecting to it. So it now adds out stuff like that. Okay. I can select edges, and this is what I did before. You can select one edge, pull it out, same thing. What I did before was if you double click, it will keep selecting all the way around until it stops. And then I can scale these, because they're all edges. I'd scale them out, and now I get this kind of shape. Cool. And then this is a polygon. Same diff, you can rotate the polygon, scale it, move it, whatever. You get the gist, right? This final one is where there's an element. So as I said, an object can have multiple elements. This one only has one element. It's all the same thing. But if I make copies of this, cool. To copy, it is move. Just hold shift while you're moving. It'll make a copy. Found two elements. So then I can use the element selection, and I'm selecting each element individually. So that's one element, that's one element. If I get out of this, so if I click like here, all these are one object. See? So I might want to do some stuff like, I don't know, let's make a really terrible bunny. So like if I put that here, and I put that here, it's really bad. Modern art, there you go. So if I have that, all of these still act as the same object, okay? And if I bring them into Unity, all those same pieces will still act as the same object. Cool? So you don't have to worry about them all being separate. If I want to move them individually in Unity, they have to be separate objects. They can't be elements, because as far as Unity is concerned, this whole thing is just one piece. Coolio? Okay. All right. So let's take a little quite small break there, and then when we come back, I will show you how the first process of like box modeling, we're going to create literally a box. Cool. We'll take a 10-minute break. Whoever doesn't have, if you have your laptop, see if you can get 3ds Max downloaded. I don't know if the Wi-Fi will be good enough, but we can try.